Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Miranda Metcalf. I am the founder and director of Pine Copper Live, the internet's #1 printmaking podcast, and I'm delighted to be joined here today by Ericka Walker, who is the artist who will be featured in the exhibition I've curated for Megalo, titled Bounty and Benevolence, which will be on exhibition the 19th of June through Saturday, the 24th of July. Now, this was originally an exhibition that we conceived about a year ago, and COVID pushed the exhibition dates back. So it's great to finally be joined here today by Ericka for a long-distance curator-artist chat about her work and her practice. Hi, Ericka.
Lovely to see you again, Miranda. Thanks for inviting me.
So before we get into the exhibition itself, can you please let people know a little bit about yourself, where you came from, and where you are now?
My mother was a daughter of a Chicago steel mill worker and a World War II veteran, and my father grew up on a farm in a tiny town in north central Illinois. He was a Vietnam vet, and they met in college, moved up to Wisconsin, and were public school educators. So I have there's this interesting mix where my mom's side she was just second generation Serbian American. But on my father's side, we go all the way back to pre-Revolutionary War. So I'm a daughter of the American Revolution as well. And anyway, I now make my home in Atlantic Canada, near Chibuktuk in Mi'kmaq, which is also referred to as Halifax, Nova Scotia. I'm on Mi'kmaq land, and I'm a professor of art at the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, which we call NASCAD. And I live here with my husband and child.
So in this exhibition at Megalo, we're showing your series called The Great Experiment. And I think that you and I both felt that this was a really good opportunity to explore some of the similarities that Canada, the United States, and Australia share in terms of colonialism, imperialism, these kind of themes of our history. Can you speak to how these sort of get represented in this series?
The body of work at Megalo has been this sort of, I guess, evolving series. It began say maybe in 2015 with the first few pieces that eventually morphed into an exploration of some of the language used to govern this territory that I currently live in, or some of the language and imagery used to prop up this idea of the nation state, basically to create the idea of the nation state. So the rhetoric, the political rhetoric, but the visualizations that came largely from the graphic art that was created here. And exploring that felt really, as this, I guess, immigrant from the US to Canada, felt like my responsibility as a person who occupies such a place of privilege, who benefits from this great experiment of the nation state of Canada, or in the US, this great experiment of liberty, as some scholars have called it. The research practice that goes into making the work has really revealed to me those similarities or synergies or that common ground that former colonies of the British Empire share in their nation shaping project. There's a lot of differences, but there's a lot of similarities as well. There's a project I did long ago. It was this commissioned kind of exchange between myself and a number of other artists in Australia. And I started just doing a cursory dive into some of the patriotic songs and place names in Australia, and sort of noticing some of the similarities between our patriotic songs, Canada's patriotic songs, and Australia's. And of course, with that sort of preliminary research, of course, noticed similarities, noticed just disturbing realities too, about what we value and what kinds of ideas that are evoked to sort of incite this connection, this rousing connection and spirit with national identity. It's very disturbing, but it's also very effective. I'm really drawn to that in my studio practice, in my life, really.
I'd love for you to speak through your research process a little bit. I know that you're someone who goes into historical documents and archives to gain source material. I just love you to talk about how you sort of dive into that, and also how do you know when you found something that you want to incorporate? What does that feel like?
So that, yeah, the work begins with this research into these different like tools of colonization, machinery. And I'll be honest with you, like I just I love drawing. I like drawing. And so the other side of me that's not speaking as an academic would also say, and I say this to students once in a while too, like honestly, sometimes I just close my eyes and I think, what's the most badass thing that I can imagine? Like, what do I want to draw? What do I want to draw? What do I want to make an image of that's powerful and really like gets people in the breadbasket or wherever images are supposed to hit you. Anyway, so I start with the machine, the tools of colonialism, the railroad, the moldboard plow, more recently, the hydroelectric power, or some of the mechanisms used in forestry. I kind of mash them into compositions while also looking very intently at the propaganda that was created by both America and Canada to seduce settlers to come over from other parts of the world, or to sell the idea of the railroad and Western expansion, or in more recent history to sort of advertise or extol the virtues of this idea of what rugged Canadian stewardship looks like, or in some cases, what the sort of idealized Western masculine man ought to be doing and interested in and looking like and pursuing. So masculinity is really bound up in that too, and obviously ideas around patriarchy. I'm not interested in just simply pointing fingers and saying this is ugly, this is nasty, but looking at it as the what I've inherited. This is my heritage, and it's complicated and it's messy and it's powerful, like that idea of the rugged Western individual and all of our manifestations of progress. It's just alluring. It's sexy. It's still within so many of us, at our core. And even if we know that it's a problematic way of understanding our relationship to territory.
Your use of text is really skillful. It never feels overpowering or didactic or like it's pushing the image aside and sort of explaining the piece away. How do you find that balance between adding words to images without the words overpowering the image that you've created?
I think the questions I find myself asking is this getting too close to the point? Is this too clearly A, B, or C? Is this too clearly sound like a criticism of A? Or does this sound like A plus C equals? And because yeah, I'm looking for this this open-ended, vague, but also productively confusing, I guess, if that's the thing. I think I spend a lot of time with an image that may be partially constructed as a sketch, or maybe even fully constructed as a drawing on a stone or on films to be used for lithographs. And I just go through all this compilation of documents that I've amassed. So when I began, I think, working on the Great Experiment, I started reading through a lot of founding documents and speeches by members of the Canadian Parliament, or transcripts of debates that were happening. What I'm trying to capture is is a sense for maybe the complexity of what I've been learning along the way. Um, because this is what is important to me in the work that I'm doing, that I mentioned briefly before. I have a responsibility to know where I am and to know what has preceded me and has paved my way. And I'm not a history buff, and I've always wanted to be. But I also, yes, feel this responsibility to sort of speak to my people and have a conversation with those of us that may call ourselves settlers, benefit from these systems. But I'm also looking for something that encapsulates this sort of magniloquence of the language used to enshrine ideas of national identity, or to help people try to connect with whatever propagandistic bullshit is being proliferated, because I find those techniques of propaganda extremely fascinating and effective, and they don't haven't really changed that much in the last 500 years. Those stories are the same, and the language changes a bit, but really they're doing the same thing to us. Yeah, it's this weird thing. I'm looking for this tinge of multiple ways of interpreting the work, or whether it be just enough information there where it's like, oh, is this a critique? Is this, are we pointing a finger at somebody? Who is it? Is it me? And I don't want to confuse people, obviously, but I want to give them maybe just the right touch of, oh shoot, what is this about? Where, like, and then there's this drawing, and I think many humans are attracted to drawing or the work of other people's hands. I am. Maybe that's a way to capture people for a few seconds, and sometimes that's all you need.
So, just to finish off, what would you like people to know about this exhibition? Unfortunately, we aren't quite traveling yet freely and easily in this pandemic, so neither one of us will be able to be in Canberra for the opening or anything like that. But what message would you like to give to people who are going to come and visit Megalo to see this?
Obviously, most of us that make visual artwork want people to, take a moment and ponder these things, of course. What I really want to encourage all humans to do is to hold, and myself included, especially myself, to hold conflicting truths, to be for us to be a bit more comfortable with all of the realities of our current world. Just because like I said, just because my way has been paved by bloodshed and genocide and violence doesn't mean that the things that my ancestors carved out didn't also hold the seeds of some really amazing dedication and fortitude, and a desire to bring something good to bear for their children and grandchildren and for posterity. And those things can be true at the same time. I think that's a hard thing for us to wrestle with. And then where do we go from there once we accept all of that to be true? How do we move forward together? I don't know.
Well, thank you so much, Ericka, for joining me this evening. And I'm really looking forward to having an excuse to continue to collaborate as the exhibition moves forward. And thank you, everyone, for watching.
Thank you. Thank you.